In the early days of Bitcoin, before price charts and institutional investors, one name quietly reshaped how the world would first understand this new technology. Not a programmer at a major tech firm, not a government agency, but a young, idealistic man operating under a pseudonym. Ross Ulbricht never intended to become a symbol, yet his creation would become Bitcoin's first global spotlight and its most controversial introduction. Silk Road was not just a website, it was a collision point between ideology, technology, and unintended consequences. This is the story of how one person, without controlling Bitcoin itself, helped shape Bitcoin's early public identity, and how that identity nearly defined it forever. Early life and ideology. Ross Ulbricht grew up far from the world he would later be associated with. He was academically strong, curious, and deeply interested in ideas, especially how societies organize themselves. Ulbricht studied physics and later materials science, but his intellectual curiosity went beyond formal education. He became increasingly drawn to libertarian philosophy, Austrian economics, and the idea of free markets operating without centralized control. To him, government and large institutions weren't just inefficient, they were barriers. Barriers to voluntary exchange, barriers to personal freedom. Ulbricht believed that if people were allowed to trade freely without interference, markets would self-correct. This belief wasn't rooted in criminal ambition, it was philosophical. He was searching for systems that reduced power, not abused it. And when he discovered emerging tools like Tor and Bitcoin, he saw something powerful. A way to test those ideas in the real world. The creation of Silk Road. Silk Road was not created to get attention or make headlines. It was built to answer a simple but powerful question. What would a truly free market look like if identity checks, censorship, and centralized control were removed? To make this possible, two new technologies came together. Tor provided anonymity, allowing users to access the site without revealing who they were. Bitcoin provided a new kind of money, one that could be sent directly from person to person without asking permission. Traditional payment systems could not work in this environment. Credit cards required real names and identity verification. Banks could freeze accounts at any time. Payment processors could cancel or reverse transactions. Bitcoin was different. It didn't ask who you were. It didn't need approval. It couldn't be easily stopped. It simply worked. At that time, Bitcoin was still very new and experimental. Most people had never heard of it. Very few understood how it worked, and almost no governments were paying attention to it. Silk Road did not launch as a media event or a public statement. It began quietly as a technical experiment, a marketplace designed to run without trusting banks, companies, or institutions. Only later did the world notice what had been created, and only then did the consequences become clear. Bitcoin's first global exposure. As Silk Road grew, so did Bitcoin's visibility. Transactions increased, users from around the world participated, and for the first time, Bitcoin was being used at scale for real economic activity. But the story quickly simplified. Headlines didn't say, "Anonymous marketplace uses new digital payment system." They said, "Bitcoin enables crime. Bitcoin is the currency of the dark web." The nuance disappeared. Bitcoin wasn't described as infrastructure. It became the villain in the story. Silk Road and Bitcoin were fused together in the public imagination. This framing would follow Bitcoin for years. Law enforcement pressure and Ulbricht's capture. As Silk Road continued to grow, it became too large to stay hidden. Law enforcement agencies around the world began paying close attention. Despite what many people believed at the time, Bitcoin was not invisible or untraceable. Every transaction was recorded on a public ledger. Permanent, open to analysis. Over time, small mistakes began to add up. Operational security weakened. Behavior patterns formed. Investigators connected the dots by combining blockchain data with online activity and real-world clues. In 2013, Ross Ulbricht was arrested and publicly identified as the alleged operator of Silk Road. Law enforcement seized the servers and shut the marketplace down. Almost overnight, Silk Road disappeared from the internet. The platform was gone, But the impact of what it started on Bitcoin, on law enforcement, and on public perception was only just beginning. Trial, sentencing, and controversy. Ulbricht's trial became one of the most debated cases in crypto history. He faced multiple charges, including conspiracy and operating a criminal enterprise. He was ultimately sentenced to life in prison without parole. The severity of the sentence sparked deep controversy. Some saw it as necessary deterrence. Others argued it was disproportionate, punishing ideology as much as action. This division still exists today. The legal system delivered its judgment, but the philosophical debate never ended. Lasting impact on Bitcoin and crypto. Silk Road did not destroy Bitcoin, it challenged it. For the first time, Bitcoin was pushed into the real world under extreme pressure. Critics were certain this was the end. They believed that if Silk Road fell, Bitcoin would fall with it. But something unexpected happened. Bitcoin didn't collapse, it evolved. As Silk Road faded into history, Bitcoin outgrew its earliest narrative. New exchanges launched, making access easier and more transparent. Wallet technology improved, becoming safer and more user-friendly. Legitimate merchants began accepting Bitcoin for real goods and services. Over time, data replaced fear. Multiple studies showed that illicit activity made up only a small and shrinking percentage of Bitcoin usage, far lower than crime conducted with cash. Bitcoin proved a critical truth. It was never dependent on Silk Road. It was bigger than any single marketplace, bigger than any headline, bigger than any one use case. The protocol itself never changed sides. It remained neutral, open, censorship-resistant, unstoppable. Silk Road didn't define Bitcoin. It tested it, and under pressure, Bitcoin passed. Ross Ulbricht's place in history is complex. He was neither the hero some portray nor the caricature others reduce him to. He was an early actor in a technological moment the world wasn't ready to understand. Silk Road didn't define Bitcoin. It revealed how early narratives can shape emerging technologies, sometimes unfairly, sometimes permanently. Understanding this era matters because new technologies will always be misunderstood at first. What matters is whether they collapse under pressure or evolve beyond it. Bitcoin evolved, and that may be the most important lesson of all. So that's the story of Ross Ulbricht and Silk Road. Not as a myth, not as propaganda, but as a turning point in Bitcoin's early history. It shows how a single use case can shape public opinion, how narratives can stick longer than facts, and how a technology can be judged long before it's fully understood. Silk Road is gone. The headlines faded, but Bitcoin kept moving forward, evolving, adapting, and outgrowing its first image. History isn't just about what happened. It's about what survived. If you found this documentary useful and want more deep, honest breakdowns of tech, crypto, and history, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.